questions regarding my sharpening system. And the questions are because I don't have a Wolverine type of sharpening system. I can't have one because my sharpening tool, my 8-inch grinder, is right up against the wall. Now you may have the same situation. Because it's up against the wall, I can't have a long track that goes back because there's nowhere to go. So my track that everything guides upon comes out. Now I have two different tracks. This is one that is a shorter track for what I do most of my grinding with. If I have longer tools that I need to grind on here, I have a longer track that's located on the top. Now my T-track that everything goes off of, everybody asks me questions about distances. My 8-inch grinder sits right on top of a 3/4 inch base. Underneath that 3/4 inch base is my T-track, and it sits inside of basically just a recess in here. The bolt is bolted down into a routed area, and it gets bolted down. I made this about 4 years ago. Nothing's ever changed on it. Everything stayed pretty much the same. This is my adjustable base here that I do for most of my fingernail grinds that I'll do on tools. Most of my tools are fingernail grinds. I do have, I'll show you in another video what I do with ones that are traditional grinds, but this is for fingernail grinds today. This is adjustable back and forth. All you do is loosen that nut. Now here's the special thing about the T-track nut that's on the top here. This is a 1-inch piece. The inside of it is routed 1/4 inch with the T-nut inside that's centered up with a hole. And then this is basically just the clamp on the top. Now you do have to have a clamp like this. The reason why is because this clamp, that clamps on the top, the star clamp on the top, also is accepted by the cap nut that I have on the back here. The cap nut is glued or epoxy to this long threaded piece here that goes on top of my all thread for my piece. Now that cap nut is glued on with super glue, and that cap nut fits right inside of the middle of the star that clamps that down, and that's how I do all of my fingernail grinds. Works great. It's perfect size for inside of there. Now on top of this is the threaded, this is a nylon threaded nut here that keeps everything firmly in place so that never changes unless I want it to. On the inside here is an all thread that's 3.5 inches long. Then I have this wood thread on the top. Is a brass wood thread that's been epoxied, and put epoxy on it. Screw that into your body here on the top. On the front here I have a wood threads that I put on the inside, and this is a thumb screw that goes on the bottom here that clamps it shut. Now that's clamped shut onto a base. It looks complicated, but it's pretty easy. This is just a metal base that I have on the inside of here. Let's see if I can get it out. Falls out when it wants to. This is just a metal piece. You can see where the threaded nut goes against it in order to clamp it down. And then I just took the sides and kind of cut them and put it on the to get my length, and put it in a vise and made that metal shape. And that metal shape then stays on the inside, just like that is my base. Then you have these two pieces. One is a spacer, the 5-inch spacer that goes underneath of my V piece that's in there, and that holds the wood together. So let's get your measurements. The height of this right here is about 2.5 inches. The length of it is 2.5 inches. And the width of it this way is about 1 7/8. Okay. Now the angle of this right here is not really all that important because changing the angle is so easy, because all you need to do is change this distance here with the all thread, and that'll change the angle of your bevel that you're working with. Okay. That coupled with the adjustability of the bottom here and going back and forth will give you all of the variation that you need. Okay. So that's kind of the distances, how things work out. How this ends up, if you set this down and it looks like that, it ends up hitting pretty much on center of the 8 inches when you do that. Okay, but that depends again on where your block is going to be on the bottom. Let's go ahead and do some sharpening. Since I have my 5/8 inch block in there, I use the 5/8 inches. Now if I was going to go to my 1/2 inch, all I do is take my spacer out. I move over here to the spacer that says 1/2 inch. All I did was make the spacer so that it fits the 1/2 inch tool. Okay, so the 1/2 inch tool goes in there and I don't need to spend all day tightening this down. It tightens down pretty quick. And then I go ahead, flip it over to my registered area right here, slide that all the way up, tighten it down, and every time that I do that, it's going to end up in exactly the same spot. I put my cap nut down inside of my star clamp on the bottom here for my T-track, and off I go, sharpening one side to the other. Because it's weighted on the bottom here with all that metal, it gives it a nice smooth feel from one side to the next in doing the sharpening on that. So that's pretty much how I use this system in order to do my fingernail sharpening on all of my gouges.